Alberta Thompson, senior marketing analyst at Meridian Technologies, walks into the quarterly board meeting carrying her meticulously prepared presentation for the company's digital transformation strategy. She's worked 18 months developing this comprehensive plan that could save the struggling tech firm millions. Today marks her biggest career moment, the presentation that should secure her promotion to marketing director. She notices CEO Jonathan Hartwell's 26-year-old niece, Sophia Hartwell, sitting at the executive table with a laptop smirking. Alberta assumes Sophia's there to observe and learn about corporate operations. I settled into my chair at the polished mahogany conference table, arranging my presentation materials with practiced precision. The morning sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Meridian Technologies' executive boardroom on the 32nd floor, illuminating the faces of 12 board members who held my professional future in their hands. My leather portfolio contained printed copies of the 47 slides I'd crafted over countless late nights, each graph and recommendation backed by exhaustive market research. The quarterly board meeting represented the culmination of everything I'd worked toward during my 7 years at this Denver-based technology company. My digital transformation strategy promised to modernize our outdated systems, streamline operations across 4 departments, and position Meridian as a competitive force in the rapidly evolving software industry. The financial projections showed potential savings of $8.2 million annually, with implementation costs recovered within 14 months. CEO Jonathan Hartwell entered the room with his characteristic authoritative stride, his silver hair perfectly styled and his navy suit impeccably tailored. Behind him walked a young woman I'd seen briefly in the hallways, but never formally met. Sophia Hartwell possessed the same confident bearing as her uncle, with shoulder-length auburn hair and designer clothing that screamed expensive taste. She carried a slim laptop and wore a smile that seemed oddly triumphant for someone attending her first board meeting. "Good morning, everyone," Jonathan announced, taking his seat at the head of the table. "Before we begin Alberta's presentation, I'd like to introduce my niece, Sophia Hartwell. She recently completed her MBA at Northwestern University and will be observing today to better understand our corporate operations." I offered a polite nod toward Sophia, who responded with a brief wave before settling into an empty chair directly across from me. Her green eyes sparkled with an intensity that made me slightly uncomfortable, though I attributed this to pre-presentation nerves affecting my perception. The other board members shuffled their papers expectantly. VP Margaret Chen adjusted her reading glasses while reviewing the agenda. CFO David Rodriguez opened his tablet to take notes. Operations Director Sarah Williams whispered something to Marketing VP James Foster, both of them glancing toward me with encouraging smiles. "Alberta," Jonathan continued, "we're all eager to hear about your digital transformation initiative. The board has been looking forward to this presentation for weeks." I stood up confidently, remote control in hand, ready to deliver the performance of my career. But before I could speak, Sophia suddenly rose from her chair, her laptop now open and connected to the room's projection system. "Uncle Jonathan, if I may," she said with surprising authority. "I'd actually like to present my digital transformation strategy first. I think the board will find my approach quite innovative." My heart skipped several beats as the projection screen filled with my title slide word for word, font for font, exactly as I designed it. The company logo sat in the upper right corner above text that read, "Digital Transformation Strategy Modernizing Meridian Technologies for Competitive Advantage." Below that, instead of my name, appeared, "Presented by Sophia Hartwell, MBA." I've spent months researching industry trends and developing a comprehensive modernization plan. Sophia began advancing to the next slide with practiced ease. "Our current systems are operating at 63% efficiency, costing us approximately $2.7 million in productivity losses annually. Every statistic, every percentage, every carefully researched data point came directly from my work. I sat frozen in disbelief as Sophia continued presenting my labor of love with complete confidence. She navigated through slides detailing customer acquisition costs, market penetration analysis, and competitive positioning strategies, all concepts I'd painstakingly researched using proprietary databases and industry contacts. The board members leaned forward with obvious interest as Sophia explained the implementation timeline I'd developed. Her delivery was smooth and polished, though I noticed subtle hesitations when she reached more technical sections. She stumbled slightly over terms like API integration protocols and scalable infrastructure frameworks, concepts I could explain in my sleep after months of detailed study. The projected return on investment reaches 22.4% within the first fiscal year. Sophia continued displaying my financial modeling charts. Implementation costs total $1.8 million, with break-even achieved in month 14 through operational efficiencies and reduced vendor dependencies. Margaret Chen nodded approvingly while taking detailed notes. These numbers are quite impressive, Sophia. How did you develop such accurate cost projections? Extensive market research and vendor negotiations, Sophia replied smoothly, though I caught a brief flicker of uncertainty in her expression. I've analyzed comparable implementations at 17 companies in our sector. That was my research, 17 case studies I'd compiled through professional networking and industry conferences. I'd spent 3 weeks traveling to different cities, conducting interviews with CTOs and operations directors who'd overseen similar transformations. The detailed case study summaries now appearing on screen contained insights I'd gathered through personal relationships and careful relationship building. David Rodriguez raised his hand. Can you elaborate on the cybersecurity framework integration you mentioned in slide 23? Sophia's confidence wavered noticeably as she advanced to the security architecture diagram I'd created with input from our IT director. The framework utilizes multi-layered protection protocols with enhanced encryption standards, she said, vaguely, clearly lacking deep understanding of the technical specifications. I finally found my voice. Excuse me, but those are my slides. The room fell silent as 12 pairs of eyes turned toward me. Sophia's expression shifted quickly from surprise to what appeared to be prepared indignation. I'm sorry, Alberta, but I think you're mistaken, Jonathan said with a dismissive tone. Sophia has been working on this presentation for quite some time. Those are identical to my slides. I insisted, standing up with my portfolio open. The formatting, the data, even the color scheme, everything matches my work exactly. Sophia's eyes flashed with sudden anger. Alberta, I understand you might feel competitive, but accusing me of theft is completely inappropriate. I've worked incredibly hard on this analysis. The board members exchanged uncomfortable glances as tension filled the room. I felt my carefully planned presentation slipping away, replaced by a nightmare scenario I'd never imagined possible. The atmosphere in the boardroom shifted dramatically as Sophia's expression transformed from momentary panic into calculated offense. She closed her laptop with deliberate precision and faced me directly, her voice carrying a tone of wounded dignity that immediately captured the room's sympathy. I cannot believe what I'm hearing, she said, her voice trembling with apparent emotion. Alberta, I've spent countless hours developing this strategy, and now you're trying to claim it as your own work simply because we might share some similar conclusions. My stomach dropped as I realized the impossible position I'd been placed in. Standing there with my leather portfolio facing a room full of executives who'd just witnessed what appeared to be a junior employee accusing the CEO's niece of plagiarism, I felt like Alice tumbling down the rabbit hole. Sophia, these aren't similar conclusions, I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. These are my exact slides, my research, my financial models. I've been working on this project for 18 months. Sophia reached into her designer briefcase and produced a folder thick with documents. Since Alberta seems determined to make these baseless accusations, I feel compelled to defend myself with evidence. She handed the folder to her uncle while maintaining eye contact with me. These are printed emails showing Alberta repeatedly requesting access to my preliminary research over the past several months. Jonathan opened the folder and began reviewing the contents, his expression growing increasingly stern. Margaret Chen leaned over to examine the documents, her eyebrows raising with apparent surprise. The other board members whispered among themselves, creating a buzz of speculation that filled me with dread. According to these emails, Jonathan said, his voice carrying clear disapproval, Alberta contacted Sophia multiple times, seeking inspiration and guidance for her own presentation. These messages suggest she was struggling with her analysis and hoped to benefit from Sophia's family connections. That's impossible, I protested. I've never sent emails like that. I've barely spoken to Sophia since she started visiting the office. Sophia dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, though I noticed she managed to avoid smudging her expertly applied makeup. Alberta, I tried to be helpful when you reached out, but I never imagined you would try to reverse engineer my work and present it as your own creation. David Rodriguez examined copies of the alleged emails, shaking his head with obvious disappointment. Alberta, these messages are quite detailed. They reference specific research methodologies and request access to proprietary data Sophia had compiled. I felt the walls closing in as the fabricated evidence mounted against me. The emails contained technical language that demonstrated intimate knowledge of my actual research process, suggesting whoever created them had access to my work files and communication patterns. The timestamps showed a progression of increasingly desperate requests, painting a picture of professional inadequacy and ethical compromise. Furthermore, Sophia continued producing additional documents. I have security footage showing Alberta working late in the office on multiple occasions, accessing computers and files after normal business hours. I believe she was attempting to gather information about my research without permission. Sarah Williams frowned deeply as she reviewed the security logs. Alberta, these show you in the office until nearly midnight on several occasions over the past month. That's highly unusual behavior. Those late nights represented my dedication to perfecting the presentation hours I'd spent refining calculations, double-checking sources, and polishing visual elements. Now they were being twisted into evidence of corporate espionage and unethical conduct. I was working on my own presentation, I explained desperately. Those late nights were me putting finishing touches on my research, not stealing anyone else's work. James Foster looked up from the documents with a troubled expression. Alberta, some of these emails reference conversations about your struggles with market analysis and competitive positioning. They suggest you felt overwhelmed by the scope of the project. The psychological manipulation was masterful. Sophia had created a narrative that explained every detail while painting me as an insecure employee who'd resorted to theft when faced with a challenging assignment. The forged emails contained just enough technical accuracy to seem credible while portraying my character in the worst possible light. I understand everyone's confused, Sophia said with apparent reluctance, but I have to protect my intellectual property. Alberta's accusations are particularly hurtful because I've actually tried to mentor her informally when she expressed concerns about her analytical capabilities. Margaret Chen set down the documents and looked directly at me with deep disappointment. Alberta, these allegations are extremely serious. If you've been accessing confidential research without authorization and attempting to claim credit for work you didn't perform, we have significant ethical violations to address. The irony was suffocating. I was being accused of the exact crime that had been committed against me while the actual perpetrator sat across the table portraying herself as the victim. The board member's body language had shifted completely. Arms crossed, suspicious glances, protective positioning around Sophia. The most disappointing aspect, Jonathan said gravely, is that Alberta seemed to believe she could leverage family connections through Sophia to advance her own career. This represents a serious breach of professional conduct and personal ethics. I never tried to leverage anything, I said, hearing the desperation creeping into my voice. I don't even know Sophia well enough to have these conversations she's describing. Alberta, David Rodriguez interjected. The email evidence is quite comprehensive. The technical details and specific references to our internal processes suggest these communications definitely originated from within our organization. Sophia dabbed her eyes again, this performance even more convincing than her first display of wounded feelings. I really hoped we could avoid this confrontation, but Alberta's accusations have forced me to defend myself publicly. I never wanted to embarrass a colleague, especially not in front of the entire board. The manufactured emails had been crafted with sophisticated understanding of corporate communication patterns and psychological manipulation. They referenced real projects, actual deadlines, and genuine challenges within our industry details that could only come from someone with insider access to company operations and strategic planning. Perhaps most concerning, Margaret Chen added, is the pattern these emails reveal. They show escalating requests for help followed by apparent frustration when assistance wasn't provided quickly enough. This suggests a troubling mindset regarding professional collaboration and intellectual property rights. I looked around the table at faces that had been friendly and encouraging just 15 minutes earlier, now reflecting suspicion and professional disappointment. My reputation, built over 7 years of dedicated service, innovative thinking, and ethical conduct, was crumbling in real time based on fabricated evidence and masterful psychological manipulation. The trap had been set with precision, utilizing my own work against me while creating an alternative narrative that explained every detail while destroying my credibility. I realized with growing horror that this wasn't spontaneous retaliation. It was a carefully orchestrated plan designed to steal not just my presentation, but my entire career trajectory. The silence in the boardroom stretched for several uncomfortable seconds before Jonathan Hartwell cleared his throat and straightened his tie, a gesture I'd learned to recognize as his prelude to major announcements. The morning light had shifted, casting longer shadows across the polished table where my career dreams lay in ruins. Given the circumstances we've just witnessed, Jonathan began, his voice carrying the weight of executive authority. I believe this situation requires immediate action. The digital transformation project represents a critical initiative for Meridian's future, and we cannot afford any delays or complications. My hands trembled slightly as I gripped the edge of the conference table, sensing that something far worse than public humiliation was about to unfold. The board members sat in expectant silence, their attention focused entirely on the CEO, whose next words would shape the trajectory of multiple careers. Sophia's presentation demonstrates exactly the kind of innovative thinking and strategic vision Meridian needs in its leadership positions. Jonathan continued, glancing around the table to gauge board member reactions. Her analysis is comprehensive, financially sound, and immediately actionable. Margaret Chen nodded in agreement. The market research depth and implementation timeline show remarkable preparation and professional maturity. Therefore, Jonathan announced, effective immediately, I'm promoting Sophia Hartwell to the position of marketing director. Her first responsibility will be overseeing the implementation of this digital transformation strategy. The words hit me like physical blows. The marketing director positioned the role I'd worked toward for 3 years, the promotion that represented validation of my dedication and expertise, was being handed to someone who'd stolen my work and destroyed my reputation in a single morning. Applause erupted around the table as board members congratulated Sophia on her sudden elevation. David Rodriguez shook her hand enthusiastically while Sarah Williams offered warm words of welcome to the executive team. James Foster commented on how refreshing it was to see fresh talent bringing new perspectives to established challenges. "Thank you all so much," Sophia said with carefully modulated humility. "I'm honored by this opportunity and committed to exceeding your expectations. I promise to bring the same dedication and innovation to this role that I've demonstrated in developing this strategic initiative." The irony was suffocating. Sophia was being praised for qualities she'd stolen from me. Dedication, innovation, strategic thinking, while I sat frozen in my chair watching my professional identity being transferred to someone else. But Sophia wasn't finished. She reached into her briefcase again and produced another thick folder, this one marked with colorful tabs and professional binding. "Actually, Uncle Jonathan, I've already begun preparing for this expanded role," she said with confidence that sent chills down my spine. "I've developed a comprehensive corrective action plan to address some problematic situations I've identified within the current marketing department structure." Jonathan accepted the folder with obvious interest. "Forward-thinking preparation. Exactly what we need in leadership positions." As Sophia began presenting her corrective action plan, the true scope of the conspiracy became terrifyingly clear. She'd prepared detailed organizational charts showing my department's restructuring with my key projects reassigned to her direct supervision and my team members reporting through new hierarchical channels that bypassed my authority entirely. I've identified several inefficiencies in current project management approaches, Sophia explained, advancing through slides that dissected my work with surgical precision. "These recommendations will streamline operations while ensuring proper oversight of strategic initiatives." The plan included reassigning my 3 most successful campaigns to different team leaders, dissolving my data analytics partnership with the IT department, and transferring my client relationships to account managers who reported directly to Sophia. My role was being systematically dismantled while being portrayed as organizational improvement. "Additionally," Sophia continued, "I've prepared transition plans for team members who may have difficulty adapting to enhanced performance standards. This includes retraining programs and alternative placement options for employees whose skills don't align with our elevated expectations." Margaret Chen reviewed the organizational charts with obvious approval. "This demonstrates remarkable insight into operational dynamics. How did you develop such detailed understanding of departmental functions?" "I've been observing workflow patterns and conducting informal interviews with team members over the past several months," Sophia replied smoothly. Many employees expressed frustration with current management approaches and welcomed the opportunity to discuss improvement possibilities. The depth of preparation was staggering. Sophia had spent months gathering intelligence about my department, building relationships with my colleagues, and identifying vulnerabilities in my management style. She'd leveraged her family connection to gain access to confidential information while positioning herself as a sympathetic listener for any workplace complaints. "Most importantly," Sophia said, producing yet another set of documents, "I've already initiated preliminary discussions with several key clients about transitioning their accounts to ensure continuity during this leadership change. Their feedback has been overwhelmingly positive about implementing fresh approaches to their marketing challenges." David Rodriguez examined the client feedback forms with growing enthusiasm. "These testimonials are impressive. It sounds like our major accounts are eager for new creative directions. I recognize the client names relationships I'd cultivated over years of dedicated service built through late-night problem-solving sessions and innovative campaign development." Sophia had somehow accessed these contacts and positioned herself as the solution to problems I didn't even know existed. The psychological manipulation extended beyond stealing my work to actively undermining my professional relationships. She'd used her insider access to identify potential weak points in client satisfaction, then presented herself as the remedy while I remained unaware of any concerns. "Finally," Sophia concluded, I've prepared a timeline for implementing these organizational improvements while maintaining project momentum. The transition can begin immediately without disrupting current client deliverables or campaign schedules. Jonathan closed the folder and looked around the table with evident satisfaction. Sophia, this level of preparation exceeds anything I could have hoped for. You've demonstrated not just analytical capability but genuine leadership vision. The board members exchanged impressed glances and approving nods. Sarah Williams commented on how rare it was to find someone who combined strategic thinking with practical implementation planning. James Foster praised Sophia's proactive approach to organizational development. I sat in stunned silence, realizing that everything I'd built over 7 years, my team relationships, client connections, project successes, and professional reputation was being transferred to someone who'd engineered my destruction with methodical precision. The conspiracy wasn't just about stealing a single presentation. It was a comprehensive plan to take over my entire professional identity while eliminating me as competition for advancement opportunities. Sophia had used months of careful observation, family insider access, and psychological manipulation to position herself as the obvious replacement for a role she'd systematically undermined. As the board meeting continued with discussions of implementation timelines and budget allocations, I understood that I was witnessing something far more sophisticated than simple nepotism. This was corporate warfare conducted with intelligence gathering, strategic planning, and flawless execution that would have impressed military strategists. The marketing director position was no longer just being handed to someone else. It was being claimed by someone who'd engineered my downfall with surgical precision, while making it appear that I'd destroyed myself through ethical failures and professional incompetence. 3 days after the devastating board meeting, I sat in my significantly smaller office relocated from the 7th floor marketing department to a cramped space near the storage rooms on the 3rd floor, staring at my laptop screen with growing determination. The demotion had been swift and thorough. My keycard access to executive floors, revoked my email distribution lists, modified to exclude strategic communications, and my project responsibilities transferred to Sophia's expanding domain. The official explanation characterized my reassignment as temporary administrative restructuring pending investigation of ethical concerns. In corporate terminology, I'd been professionally quarantined while maintaining the appearance of continued employment, but something inside me refused to accept defeat. The precision of Sophia's attack suggested planning and preparation that extended far beyond a simple case of workplace theft. If she'd orchestrated this conspiracy with such methodical detail, there might be patterns of similar behavior in her background evidence that could expose the truth behind her carefully constructed facade. I began my investigation by reaching out to former colleagues who'd left Meridian for opportunities at other companies. My first call was to Rachel Martinez, who'd worked as assistant marketing director before accepting a position with a Denver advertising agency 6 months earlier. Alberta. "I'm so sorry to hear what happened," Rachel said when I explained the situation. "But honestly, I'm not entirely surprised. There were some strange conversations happening in the executive offices during my last few weeks at Meridian." "What kind of conversations?" I asked, settling back in my chair with a notepad. "I overheard Sophia talking to your former assistant Jennifer Walsh about gathering insights on marketing department operations," Rachel explained. "At the time, I thought she was just trying to understand the company culture, but Jennifer seemed uncomfortable with some of the questions being asked. This revelation provided my first concrete lead. Jennifer had left Meridian 2 months ago to accept a position with Global Mart, one of the largest retail corporations in the country. If Sophia had been pumping her for information about my work processes and strategic planning, Jennifer might have additional details about the conspiracy's timeline and methods. I spent the next several hours crafting a careful email to Jennifer, explaining my situation without revealing too much about my investigation. Her response arrived within 2 hours, along with a phone number and a request to call her immediately. "Alberta, thank God you contacted me," Jennifer said when I reached her at Global Mart's Chicago headquarters. "I've been feeling terrible about what happened, but I didn't know how to reach out without potentially making things worse for you." "What do you mean?" I asked, though something in her tone suggested she possessed information that could change everything. "Sophia approached me multiple times during my last month at Meridian, asking detailed questions about your work habits, client relationships, and project management methods," Jennifer explained. She claimed she was conducting an informal efficiency study for her uncle, but the questions felt invasive and inappropriate. My hands began shaking as I took notes. "What kinds of questions specifically?" "She wanted to know which clients seemed most satisfied with your work, what complaints or concerns anyone had expressed about marketing department operations, and whether you'd ever mentioned feeling overwhelmed by project deadlines," Jennifer detailed. She also asked about your computer access patterns and whether you often worked late in the office. The picture was becoming clearer. Sophia had systematically gathered intelligence about my professional vulnerabilities while identifying opportunities to exploit any weaknesses in my client relationships or work processes. "But that's not the most disturbing part," Jennifer continued. "After I started working here at Global Mart, I decided to research Sophia's background because something about her approach had bothered me. Alberta, what I discovered is deeply concerning." Jennifer explained that her position at Global Mart provided access to industry networking databases and professional verification systems that weren't available to the general public. Using these resources, she'd uncovered troubling inconsistencies in Sophia's educational and employment history. Sophia's MBA from Northwestern University was obtained through a documented cheating scandal, Jennifer revealed. The university investigated multiple cases of purchased research papers, paid examination substitutes, and direct bribes to faculty members. Sophia's name appears in sealed disciplinary records that were leaked to industry watchdog groups. My heart raced as I processed this information. Academic fraud represented a serious ethical violation that could undermine Sophia's credibility and professional standing if properly documented and presented. "There's more," Jennifer continued. "Before attending business school, Sophia worked for a nonprofit organization in Chicago called Community Development Partners. I found court documents showing she embezzled $47,000 by creating fictitious vendor accounts and approving fraudulent invoices for personal expenses. The scope of Sophia's criminal history was staggering. Embezzlement represented a federal crime that could result in significant legal consequences if properly prosecuted. More importantly for my situation, it established a clear pattern of unethical behavior that supported my accusations about stolen intellectual property. How did she avoid prosecution for the embezzlement?" I asked frantically, taking notes on every detail Jennifer provided. "The nonprofit organization chose to handle the matter privately to avoid negative publicity that could affect their donor relationships," Jennifer explained. They recovered most of the stolen funds by seizing Sophia's bank accounts and personal assets, but they agreed not to press criminal charges in exchange for her immediate resignation and confidentiality agreement. This revealed a troubling pattern. Sophia used legal settlements and non-disclosure agreements to escape consequences for her unethical behavior while maintaining a clean public reputation. The nonprofit organization's desire to protect their image had inadvertently enabled her to continue victimizing other employers. "I've also found evidence of similar incidents at 2 other companies," Jennifer added. Sophia worked briefly for a marketing consulting firm in Chicago, where she allegedly stole client presentation materials from junior associates. 3 employees filed formal complaints before she suddenly resigned and relocated to Denver. The pattern was unmistakable. Sophia specialized in identifying vulnerable colleagues, stealing their work, and leveraging family connections or legal intimidation to escape consequences when confronted. My situation at Meridian represented the culmination of years of refined predatory behavior. Finally, Jennifer said, I discovered that Northwestern University is currently reviewing Sophia's degree status, following new evidence of academic misconduct. If the review confirms the fraud allegations, her MBA could be formally revoked. This information provided powerful ammunition for challenging Sophia's qualifications and exposing her deceptive practices. An MBA degree represented a significant credential for executive-level positions, and its potential revocation would undermine her entire professional identity. As I thanked Jennifer for her courage in sharing this information, she provided one final piece of crucial intelligence. Alberta, I should mention that I'm now working as Chief Information Officer for Global Mart's Strategic Planning Division, Jennifer said. We're currently evaluating technology partnerships with several companies, including Meridian Technologies. If you need someone with technical expertise to verify the authenticity of your stolen presentation materials, I'm in a position to help. The conversation ended with Jennifer promising to compile formal documentation of her research findings and send them to me through secure channels. As I hung up the phone, I realized that Sophia's systematic approach to destroying my career had inadvertently created a network of witnesses and evidence that could be used to expose her fraudulent practices. For the first time since the board meeting catastrophe, I felt a spark of hope. The investigation was revealing not just isolated incidents of misconduct, but a comprehensive pattern of criminal and unethical behavior that extended far beyond simple workplace theft. Sophia's apparent strength, her methodical approach to manipulation and fraud, might ultimately become the source of her downfall. 2 weeks into my investigation, I'd accumulated a substantial file of evidence documenting Sophia's history of fraud, theft, and academic misconduct. The documentation included university disciplinary records, court filings from the Chicago embezzlement case, and testimony from 3 former colleagues who'd witnessed similar incidents of intellectual property theft at other companies. But I needed something more powerful than historical evidence to expose Sophia's current deception. I required a situation where her lack of genuine expertise would be demonstrated publicly in front of witnesses who could verify her incompetence and my authentic authorship of the stolen presentation materials. The opportunity presented itself during a casual conversation with my former assistant Jennifer Walsh, who called me from Global Mart headquarters with urgent news about Meridian's business development efforts. Alberta, you need to know that Sophia has scheduled a presentation to our executive team next Friday. Jennifer informed me, her voice carrying obvious concern. She's claiming to have developed an innovative digital transformation strategy that could revolutionize our retail operations. My blood ran cold as I realized the implications. She's using my presentation to pitch Global Mart directly. It appears that way, Jennifer confirmed. Our Chief Executive Officer, Patricia Coleman, specifically requested a technical demonstration of the implementation framework because Global Mart is considering a $12 million investment in modernization initiatives. The stakes couldn't have been higher. Meridian Technologies was struggling financially with quarterly reports showing declining revenues and increasing operational costs. A $12 million contract with Global Mart represented the difference between corporate survival and potential bankruptcy. Sophia was gambling my stolen work to secure the company's future while positioning herself as the architect of salvation. Jennifer, this might be exactly what we need to expose her, I said, my mind racing through possibilities. Sophia doesn't understand the technical complexity of the implementation framework. If your executive team asks detailed questions about system integration and cybersecurity protocols, she'll be completely out of her depth. That's exactly what I was thinking. Jennifer agreed. Patricia Coleman built her career as a technology executive before transitioning to retail operations. She asks extremely technical questions and expects detailed answers that demonstrate genuine expertise. We began developing a strategy that would expose Sophia's superficial knowledge while protecting both Jennifer's position at Global Mart and my own investigation. The plan required careful coordination to ensure that Sophia's incompetence would be revealed through natural questioning rather than obvious setup. I'll brief Patricia Coleman and our Chief Technology Officer Marcus Thompson about the technical complexity of digital transformation implementations, Jennifer explained. I won't mention anything about your situation, but I'll emphasize the importance of verifying the presenter's deep understanding of integration protocols and security frameworks. The beauty of this approach was its authenticity. Global Mart executives would be asking legitimate technical questions that any qualified presenter should be able to answer competently. Sophia's inability to provide detailed responses would reflect genuine professional inadequacy rather than targeted sabotage. Over the following week, I worked with Jennifer to identify the most technical aspects of my original presentation areas where superficial knowledge would be immediately obvious to expert evaluators. We focused on quantum encryption protocols, API integration frameworks, and multi-layered cybersecurity architecture that required deep understanding of both theoretical concepts and practical implementation challenges. The quantum encryption section is particularly complex, I explained to Jennifer during one of our preparation calls. I spent 3 months researching post-quantum cryptography standards and their compatibility with legacy system architectures. Someone without extensive technical background would struggle to explain the mathematical foundations or practical deployment requirements. Jennifer agreed to ensure that Marcus Thompson, Global Mart's Chief Technology Officer, would be present during Sophia's presentation with a full understanding of the technical depth required for successful implementation. His questions would naturally expose any gaps in genuine expertise. Marcus has a PhD in computer science from MIT and 20 years of experience implementing enterprise-level security systems, Jennifer explained. He has zero patience for consultants who make claims they can't support with detailed technical knowledge. We also developed contingency plans for different scenarios that might unfold during the presentation. If Sophia attempted to deflect technical questions by claiming proprietary limitations or confidentiality restrictions, Jennifer would be prepared to request specific clarifications that legitimate experts could provide without revealing competitive advantages. The key is making sure her incompetence appears natural rather than orchestrated, I reminded Jennifer. We want Global Mart executives to conclude independently that Sophia lacks the expertise to manage a $12 million implementation project. As the presentation date approached, I felt a mixture of anticipation and nervous energy that reminded me of preparing for final examinations during my graduate studies. Everything depended on Sophia's predictable tendency to overestimate her ability to fake expertise in areas requiring genuine technical knowledge. The night before Sophia's scheduled presentation, Jennifer called with final intelligence about Global Mart's evaluation process and the specific executives who would be attending the meeting. Patricia Coleman will be there along with Marcus Thompson and our Director of Strategic Planning, Carol Stevens, Jennifer reported. All 3 of them have technical backgrounds and experience evaluating complex implementation proposals. They're specifically interested in hearing detailed explanations of security protocols and system integration timelines. Perfect, I replied, feeling confident about the trap we'd carefully constructed. Sophia's presentation style relies on smooth delivery and superficial charm, but she'll be facing experts who can immediately recognize authentic technical knowledge versus polished deception. As I prepared for bed that night, I reflected on the irony of the situation. Sophia had stolen my work, believing that strong presentation skills could compensate for lack of deep expertise. Tomorrow's meeting would demonstrate that genuine technical competence couldn't be faked when facing qualified evaluators who understood the complexity of the subject matter. The trap was set with precision that matched Sophia's own methodical approach to manipulation and fraud. Her downfall would come not from external sabotage, but from the natural consequences of attempting to represent expertise she'd never actually developed. Friday morning arrived with crisp October air and brilliant sunshine streaming through my small third-floor office window. I'd deliberately scheduled a routine vendor meeting in the building's main conference room at exactly the same time as Sophia's presentation to Global Mart executives, positioning myself where I could observe the proceedings without appearing to interfere with company business. Through careful coordination with Jennifer Walsh, I'd learned that the presentation would take place in Meridian's executive boardroom, the same venue where my career had been destroyed 3 weeks earlier. The irony wasn't lost on me that Sophia's downfall might unfold in the exact location where she'd achieved her greatest triumph. At 9:30, I watched through the glass partition as Global Mart executives arrived for their scheduled meeting. Patricia Coleman, a distinguished woman in her 50s with silver hair and confident bearing, entered alongside Marcus Thompson, whose casual attire and wire-rimmed glasses couldn't disguise his reputation as one of the industry's most respected technology experts. Director of Strategic Planning Carol Stevens completed the evaluation team carrying a tablet and several thick folders that suggested extensive preparation for the technical assessment. CEO Jonathan Hartwell greeted the Global Mart representatives with obvious enthusiasm, his body language conveying the importance of this potential partnership to Meridian's financial survival. The $12 million contract represented more than just revenue. It could determine whether the company remained viable in an increasingly competitive market. Sophia entered the boardroom with characteristic confidence, her designer suit perfectly tailored, and her presentation materials organized with professional precision. She'd clearly invested significant effort in preparing for this career-defining moment, though I knew her preparation was limited to memorizing my technical content without understanding the underlying concepts. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jonathan announced, "I'm pleased to introduce our marketing director, Sophia Hartwell, who will be presenting Meridian's innovative digital transformation strategy." Sophia recently developed this comprehensive framework, and we're excited to share her vision with potential implementation partners. From my position in the adjacent conference room, I could see Sophia's confident smile as she activated the projection system and began displaying the slides I'd created through months of dedicated research. Her opening remarks were smooth and polished, covering market analysis and competitive positioning with apparent expertise. Global Mart's retail operations currently face significant challenges in digital customer engagement and supply chain optimization. Sophia began advancing through slides that detailed industry trends and consumer behavior patterns. Our framework addresses these challenges through integrated technology solutions that enhance operational efficiency while improving customer satisfaction metrics. Patricia Coleman leaned forward with obvious interest as Sophia presented financial projections and implementation timelines. The Global Mart CEO's background in technology gave her sophisticated understanding of digital transformation complexity, making her an ideal evaluator of authentic technical expertise. For the first 20 minutes, Sophia's presentation proceeded smoothly. Her delivery was confident and engaging, covering strategic overview and business case development with professional competence. I began to worry that she might successfully navigate the entire presentation without encountering technical questions that exposed her superficial knowledge. Then Marcus Thompson raised his hand to ask the first substantive technical question. "Sophia, Can you elaborate on the API integration protocols mentioned in Slide 18? He asked, his tone suggesting genuine professional curiosity rather than challenging skepticism. Specifically, how do you plan to handle legacy system compatibility during the transition period? Sophia's confidence flickered momentarily before she recovered with a general response about utilizing industry-standard protocols and phased implementation approaches. Her answer was technically accurate, but lacked the specific details that a genuine expert would provide when discussing complex integration challenges. Marcus nodded politely but made notes that suggested her vague response hadn't fully satisfied his inquiry. Could you provide more detail about the specific protocols you're recommending REST APIs, GraphQL, or perhaps a hybrid approach depending on system requirements? We would definitely utilize the most appropriate protocols for each integration challenge, Sophia replied, her discomfort becoming more noticeable as she struggled to provide concrete technical specifications. Carol Stevens joined the questioning with inquiries about data migration timelines and security validation processes. Sophia's responses became increasingly generic, relying on buzzwords and industry terminology without demonstrating deep understanding of practical implementation requirements. The security framework incorporates multi-layered protection with enhanced encryption standards, Sophia said, advancing to slides that detailed cybersecurity architecture. Our approach ensures comprehensive data protection throughout the transformation process. This was approaching the moment Jennifer and I had anticipated the technical deep dive that would expose Sophia's inability to support her claims with genuine expertise. Marcus Thompson's next question would determine whether our carefully laid trap would successfully reveal her incompetence. That's interesting, Marcus said, reviewing the security architecture diagram. Can you walk us through the specific encryption protocols you're proposing? Are you recommending AES 256 for symmetric encryption, RSA for asymmetric applications, or perhaps transitioning to post-quantum cryptography standards, given recent advances in quantum computing capabilities? Sophia's face went pale as she realized she'd entered territory where superficial knowledge would be immediately obvious to technical experts. The quantum encryption section represented the most complex aspect of my original research concepts that required months of study to understand fully. Our encryption approach utilizes the most current industry standards, she said weakly, clearly stalling for time while trying to formulate a convincing response. Specifically regarding post-quantum cryptography, Marcus continued. How do you plan to handle the transition from current encryption methods to quantum-resistant algorithms? This is becoming a critical consideration for enterprise-level implementations. The moment had arrived. Sophia stood frozen at the front of the room, her confident facade crumbling as she faced questions that demanded authentic technical expertise rather than polished presentation skills. I could see panic beginning to replace confidence in her expression. That's when I made my move. I stood up from my vendor meeting and walked calmly into the executive boardroom, maintaining professional composure while positioning myself where everyone could see me clearly. Sophia, I said in a clear, calm voice that carried across the silent room. Can you explain how the quantum encryption protocols you mentioned will interface with legacy systems that don't support post-quantum cryptography standards? The effect was immediate and devastating. Sophia's remaining composure disappeared entirely as she realized she had no understanding of the technical concepts she'd been presenting as her own expertise. Her mouth opened and closed without producing coherent sounds as she struggled to formulate any response to my precisely targeted question. The quantum protocols. We would need to consult with technical specialists about specific implementation details. She stammered, her credibility evaporating in real time. Marcus Thompson and Patricia Coleman exchanged significant glances as they recognized the implications of Sophia's complete inability to answer fundamental questions about her own presentation. The technical concepts weren't obscure academic theories. They represented practical considerations that any qualified consultant should understand thoroughly. "Alberta," Jonathan Hartwell said sharply, "what are you doing here? This is a private business meeting. I'm here because Sophia is presenting my work as her own creation." I replied calmly, producing copies of my original files with timestamps predating her presentation by 18 months. Every slide, every technical specification, every financial projection comes from research I conducted independently. The Global Mart executives sat in stunned silence as the truth began emerging. Jennifer Walsh, who had been quietly observing from her position at the conference table, confirmed my identity and explained my role in developing the authentic technical content. Alberta Thompson was the original architect of this digital transformation strategy, Jennifer stated professionally. I worked closely with her during the research and development phase, and I can verify the authenticity of her claims. Patricia Coleman looked directly at Sophia with obvious disappointment. "Ms. Hartwell, your inability to answer basic technical questions about your own presentation raises serious concerns about your qualifications to manage a $12 million implementation project." The room fell silent as Sophia's carefully constructed deception collapsed completely, leaving her exposed as a fraud who'd stolen intellectual property and attempted to deceive sophisticated business executives through misrepresentation of expertise she'd never actually developed. The aftermath of Sophia's public exposure unfolded with remarkable swiftness. Within hours of the disastrous Global Mart presentation, I found myself sitting in the same executive boardroom where my career had been nearly destroyed, but this time facing a very different reception from Meridian's board of directors. Jonathan Hartwell's expression reflected a mixture of embarrassment and professional urgency as he reviewed the comprehensive documentation I'd compiled during my 3-week investigation. The evidence folder contained university disciplinary records, court documents from Sophia's embezzlement case testimony from witnesses at multiple companies, and technical verification of my original presentation materials. "Alberta, I owe you a profound apology." Jonathan began, his voice carrying genuine remorse rather than corporate formality. "The evidence you've presented demonstrates that we made a serious error in judgment that could have destroyed both your career and our company's reputation." Margaret Chen examined the Northwestern University documents with obvious dismay. "The academic fraud allegations are extensively documented. If these records are accurate, Sophia's MBA degree was obtained through systematic cheating that undermines her entire professional qualification. The financial crimes evidence is equally troubling," added David Rodriguez, reviewing bank records and court filings from the Chicago embezzlement case. $47,000 in stolen funds represents a serious pattern of criminal behavior that we completely failed to detect during our evaluation process. What struck me most powerfully was the contrast between this board meeting and the nightmare session 3 weeks earlier. The same executives who'd applauded Sophia's stolen presentation now faced the uncomfortable reality that they'd been manipulated by sophisticated fraud and family favoritism. "Most importantly," said Operations Director Sarah Williams, "Alberta's technical expertise during the Global Mart presentation demonstrated authentic knowledge that Sophia clearly didn't possess. The quantum encryption question was particularly revealing of the depth difference between genuine expertise and superficial presentation skills." Jonathan produced a formal letter and placed it in front of me with ceremonial gravity. "Effective immediately, I'm offering you the marketing director position with a salary increase of 22% retroactive compensation for the professional damages you've suffered, and a formal public apology to clear your reputation within our industry." The vindication felt surreal after weeks of professional exile and personal devastation. The marketing director role I'd worked toward for years was finally being offered under circumstances that validated not just my technical capabilities, but my integrity and perseverance in the face of systematic fraud. Additionally, Jonathan continued, we're implementing comprehensive background verification procedures for all future executive appointments to prevent similar incidents. Family relationships will no longer influence hiring decisions, and all candidates will undergo independent evaluation of their claimed qualifications and work history. The policy changes represented systemic improvement that would protect other employees from the predatory behavior that had nearly destroyed my career. Sophia's fraud had inadvertently forced Meridian to adopt more rigorous standards that would benefit everyone. Margaret Chen provided updates on the legal consequences Sophia would face for her criminal and unethical conduct. We've reported the intellectual property theft to appropriate authorities, and the evidence you gathered supports prosecution for both fraud and embezzlement across multiple jurisdictions. Northwestern University has also confirmed they're formally reviewing her degree status. The Chicago nonprofit organization has reopened their embezzlement case based on new evidence that suggests the original investigation was incomplete, added David Rodriguez. Federal authorities are now involved because the pattern of fraud crosses state lines and involves multiple victims. Within 2 weeks, the legal machinery had begun grinding through Sophia's extensive criminal history. Northwestern University formally revoked her MBA degree after confirming systematic academic misconduct. Criminal charges were filed in Illinois and Colorado for embezzlement, fraud, and theft of intellectual property. Her carefully maintained facade of professional success crumbled as investigators uncovered additional victims at companies across 3 states. But the most satisfying development came from an unexpected source. Patricia Coleman called me directly to discuss Global Mart's continued interest in partnering with Meridian Technologies. Alberta, your expertise and integrity during that presentation impressed our entire evaluation team, Patricia explained. We'd like to move forward with the digital transformation project under your direct leadership. The $12 million contract is yours if you're willing to accept the challenge. The Global Mart partnership represented professional validation beyond anything I'd imagined possible. Working with one of the country's largest retail corporations would establish my reputation as a leading expert in digital transformation strategy while providing Meridian with the financial stability needed for long-term success. Furthermore, Patricia added, we're interested in developing a longer-term consulting relationship that could lead to additional projects with other Global Mart subsidiary companies. Your technical knowledge and ethical standards are exactly what we need for our expansion initiatives. As I reflected on the complete transformation of my circumstances, I realized this experience had taught me lessons that extended far beyond workplace politics and corporate fraud. The importance of documenting my work comprehensively, building professional networks based on genuine relationships, and maintaining integrity even when facing seemingly impossible challenges had proven crucial for both surviving the attack and ultimately achieving justice. I established an anonymous reporting system within Meridian for employees facing workplace misconduct, ensuring that future victims would have resources and support for challenging unethical behavior. My experience became a case study in corporate fraud prevention, shared with other companies to help them recognize and prevent similar incidents. The marketing director position allowed me to implement innovative strategies that transformed Meridian's competitive position within the technology industry. My department's success attracted attention from industry publications and professional associations, leading to speaking opportunities at conferences and recognition as an emerging leader in digital transformation strategy. 6 months later, as I stood before another boardroom presenting quarterly results that exceeded all projections, I realized that Sophia's attempt to destroy my career had inadvertently accelerated my professional growth and established my reputation more powerfully than years of conventional advancement might have achieved. The painful experience had forced me to develop investigative skills, strategic thinking capabilities, and personal resilience that served me well in leadership positions. Most importantly, it had demonstrated that truth and integrity could prevail against sophisticated deception when supported by courage, persistence, and carefully gathered evidence. The lesson I carry forward from this experience is that workplace injustice often feels overwhelming and insurmountable when you're facing it alone. But building authentic professional relationships, documenting your contributions thoroughly, and maintaining ethical standards even under pressure creates a foundation that can withstand attacks from those who rely on deception rather than genuine expertise. Today, as I mentor other professionals facing similar challenges, I remind them that temporary setbacks don't define permanent outcomes. Sometimes the people who try to destroy your career inadvertently provide opportunities for growth and advancement that wouldn't have existed otherwise. The digital transformation project that started this entire ordeal became one of the most successful initiatives in Meridian's history, generating cost savings and operational improvements that exceeded our most optimistic projections. Working with Global Mart opened doors to partnerships with Fortune 500 companies across multiple industries, establishing our reputation as leaders in innovative business strategy. Most importantly, Sophia's downfall sent a clear message throughout our industry that intellectual property theft and professional fraud carry serious consequences. Several other victims came forward to share their experiences, leading to additional criminal charges and creating a network of professionals committed to preventing similar incidents. As I conclude this story, I want to ask you something. Have you ever faced a situation where someone tried to take credit for your hard work or undermine your professional reputation? How did you handle it, and what would you do differently if faced with similar circumstances today? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you or helped you think about workplace challenges in a new way, please consider liking this video to help others find it. Subscribe to hear more stories about overcoming professional obstacles and building resilience in the face of workplace injustice. And please share this with anyone who might benefit from learning about the importance of documenting their contributions and standing up for truth in professional settings. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it inspires you to believe that integrity and persistence can triumph over deception and fraud, even when the odds seem impossibly stacked against you. Remember that your authentic expertise and ethical conduct are valuable assets that no one can steal, no matter how sophisticated their schemes might appear.